Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. Today, we're diving into a conversation with a colleague, Brian Mattocks, who's the COO of Podcast Chef and also the host of the Consulting Trap podcast. The Consulting Trap podcast features consultants that solve major challenges in the areas of business development and marketing with an effort to help them grow their business. So, I'm excited for you to join us in our conversation today where Brian and I talk about a variety of topics like fear and empathy and psychological safety, culture, and community groups. So, thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Doing things alone is entirely overrated. We all need a community to thrive. And that's why I'm part of an online community of writers and speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneurs called Creatives. And I love it. In the years since I joined this community, I've launched new ideas and I finally executed the dreams that sat on the shelf for years. Seriously. And I was able to do this because of the outstanding group of mentors, exceptional training, and encouraging mastermind groups with my new friends who did and continue to give me invaluable feedback. Oh, and not to mention all the fun, because we have had lots and lots of fun. Have you ever said, I want to write a book? Or do you want to use your voice for the exciting world of podcasting? If so, Called Creatives is your best resource for up-to-the-minute industry training, expert advice, live coaching, and peer support like no other. Best-selling authors and speakers Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle lead this community with a no-competition mission, and it shows. So join my friends and I in the Called Creative community. Head to my show notes, danitacummins.com/podcast, and click the link to get all the details to join. I promise you won't regret it. I look forward to seeing you in the community and watching you grow. Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Danita Cummins, and today I am super excited to be joined from Brian Mattocks. He is joining us on the show today. Brian is the COO of the Podcast Chef, and he's also the host of the Consulting Trap podcast. And he's a business coach and a consultant and an entrepreneur, which seems like a mouthful, but I'm really looking forward to having a great conversation with him today about his experiences and his thoughts about leadership. So, hey, Brian, thanks for joining the show.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you? Thanks for having me. I'm awesome.
Yeah.
I'm awesome. We got had a great conversation before we started and love to see what we can talk about during the show.
Oh, yeah. I can't even imagine. Yeah. We've already talked about video game theory and
meme culture.
Meme culture and chickens. So this is going to be an amazing podcast. I can only imagine.
Awesome.
So do you want to tell everyone a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. So I guess probably the best way to start or place to start, is I cut my teeth in corporate a long time ago, working in a large IT outsourcer, helping negotiate the agreements for how large IT contracts were deployed back when IT was still a thing. It's different now. Really different. Yeah. But what I was really fortunate to do was in my mid-20s was be working at C-suite level with C-suite kind of folks, helping them navigate the ins and outs of the difference between subjective and objective performance, right? So it's one thing if your organization's statistics are like 99%, but if all the customers are complaining, that still doesn't work. So how do you reconcile those things? Which was great. I was in a room with a lot of, really, really powerful people, really advanced in their career and learned a fair amount. And then from there, I went into a little bit of a leadership development function, outsourcing engagement. And then from there, I got kind of dissatisfied with the pace of change in corporate America. I felt like I could create change faster for my clients or for my employers. So I started my own practice, went independent, and I've been independent since 2008. Wow. Which has been a journey. Journey is the word we use to hide the word suffering from the regular folks.
That's right. Yes.
It's been a journey.
Yeah. And it's better than chapters because chapters seem segmented and kind of, journey means
disconnected.
Really, yeah. Journey implies a backpack. Yeah.
Exactly.
With a heavy load.
And it's full of baggage.
And now those are lessons and tools you can give to the world. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I've ruined it for everybody. Well done.
Oh.
So from there, starting my own practice, I kind of went through multiple iterations as one does. working with different target markets, but landed with a client and great friend and now partner doing the podcast chef thing, where we help small businesses, mid-sized businesses change the way they build relationships with prospects through podcasting.
Good.
So then that's how we met.
Yes, that's how we met, through podcasting. And I love podcasting, I'll say, which I'm pretty new to it as you know, but man, this is the coolest thing, I think. So super excited. So that's a huge background. I think probably I didn't know all those pieces, of course, because, we and I, talk about different things every time. So when you've done that, and you, I think, have a lot of value to add, first from the corporate side, because you worked there for years, and then all of the work you've done coaching and consulting all of these businesses. What do you think some of the hardest challenges are as it relates to leadership for small business leaders that they face, that they're trying to overcome? What do you think those big things are that are the hardest?
The funny thing is with small business owners, right? It was never an accident, right? There's a lot of things, and we talked about this a little bit before the call. Like, you do a lot of things, it's a learning experience, and you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
There's a big difference between being mistake tolerant and not being on purpose, right? So you can be intentional about what you're doing. A lot of people intend to go into business and they start, but then they're not prepared with the amount of mistake tolerance they kind of need to have. So,
Sure.
And they've confused that making errors along the way with being a failure. And that's not true, right? It's simply not the case. What it is you're trying to do something you've never done before.
Right.
I can tell you right now, and if you look at like the Chambers of Commerce and the SCORE, the Society for Retired Executives, ask one of them to operate a lemonade stand.
Sure.
They're not going to know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
And these are folks that were getting paid, big bucks to do what they do, and that doesn't make them business owners, and it doesn't make them entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So when you go to market for the first time or the second time or the 30th time, you have to approach it from a place of, this is something I'm going to have to figure out. It's always a puzzle. The process doesn't change, right? It's always a discovery.
Yeah.
And so if you tie yourself to that, if you tie your identity to that, if you tie who you are as a person to that discovery process, you're going to look down every road and go, I'm horrible because I couldn't solve it the first time, or I'm horrible because I couldn't figure this out. And I think that's probably the biggest kind of intrapersonal leadership challenge with small business.
Yeah, that's such a powerful statement. I actually went to a meeting last weekend, and there's a small group of people, and they're going to start a new nonprofit, right? That's never been created before. And as you were talking, I was just remembering that. And the people who are guiding the group that's just starting, one, they never really started anything from scratch, right? They walked into an existing organization that's been around for like 35 years. So it's pretty robust and has a lot of systems and boards of directors and executive directors and all those things, where you've got this group of 3 people who are starting nothing, from bare bones. And I think to that point, I listened to the guidance that the executive directors and the established board were giving to this new group of these new 3, people. And they're like, oh, you need to have all of these things. You need to have an executive director. You have to have this. You have to have blah, blah. And I was sitting there thinking, that's not how a brand new organization starts from scratch, right? Because you almost have to be, I say, scrappy. You got to be really agile and kind of bare bones when you're starting out, and continue to embrace that mindset of it's not failure, but it's like, hey, this is, the things that you would to do in an organization that's already been established, that has a solid framework and foundation, and leaders who are accustomed to working in that space. That same mindset and model is not really going to apply and translate right to success in a small business that's just starting out. So what do you think about that? And I know we've talked a little bit about nonprofits and community groups before, but how does the leadership lens change from more of a corporate, business organization when we move into that nonprofit community space and try to help lead in that culture?
Yeah, so that's a really kind of important distinction. And it's something you learn, and I'll give you a little bit of my chops in that space by trying to manage 5-year-old Cub Scouts.
Oh, man.
So 5-year-old Cub Scouts or entrepreneurs. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'll tell you a brief story. So me and my wife, my kids are much younger at the time. It's a decade ago. And we are working on a project with the kids to build a birdhouse, which is what you do in Cub Scouts.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, we're going to build a birdhouse.
Yeah.
And with kids, they're just happy to be around things that they can hammer and, like smear with glue. Like, if you confuse the outcome, though, with the intent, right?
Yeah.
You get crazy. And my spouse was working with the kids, and she was like, none of these birdhouses look like birdhouses. They all look like, modern art masterpieces. And I said, yeah. She's like, I can't do this. She's expecting the Norman Rockwell, okay, Timmy, you've painted the birdhouse very well.
Yes.
And it's just not working. And the same thing's true with the kind of leaderships, in the nonprofits, right? Or in any organization where you don't have effectively the chokehold of someone's salary. And it's a tough way to say it, right? But in corporate America or in any business, you have, like, if you don't do the job, I'm not going to pay you.
That's right.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
Whereas, and even if that's not the way you want to manage your organization in commercial enterprise, it's the unwritten secret behind the entire conversation.
Yeah.
And that threat, that hidden threat, is not a valid leadership strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the nonprofit space, you have to lead from a different place. And you have to understand that everyone is there for different reasons. The different parents in a scout troop bring different skills and experience. Different folks in your BNI chapter or whatever your networking groups are, or your chamber of commerce bring different skill sets. And each one of those skill sets may be something that as a good leader, you have to figure out how to help them find a home.
Right.
So that everyone can stay engaged. That means taking the overly enthusiastic person who wants to do everything and helping them find a place where you can essentially sandbox them or create a space for them to engage fully without making them feel less than. There's a lot of kind of mechanics in these conversations, and it's always an in the moment agile thing, to your point from earlier, right? You can't just kind of like wave your hand and it's done. It's always trying to help people find themselves through the work, right, and bring their best self to the table.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I know I started leading, I guess, officially the nonprofit. It became a 501c3 in 2018. So it's been 5 years now, almost 6 years. Before that, I was leading, in ministry. So still leading a team, but under not really, had a little bit more authority and leadership above me that helped kind of guide and frame the process and things. But I learned that early on, like, these people are coming for some other motivation, right, other than money. So I have to try to figure out what is their motivation, why they're here, what value are they receiving from this engagement, which is very individualized, and then filter all of that through their biases and my biases and all of the things that we don't know and see. And so I came to really understand the power of emotional intelligence. We kind of say that in leadership, like emotional intelligence is much more important than your, intelligence, but I think that was really, really important because it started to put me outside. I had to get outside myself. I had to understand why I was receiving, messages a certain way, why I was feeling a certain way, and then try to get to that place of trying to help lead the person through theirs, right? So that they could see why they're here, what's motivating them, what's causing them the greatest amount of confusion and frustration. And candidly, most days I didn't do it very well, and there were a lot of people that walked away, but you were going to say something. What was it?
You raise an important point. And I think to that part of the conversation, I think it's important to understand that in many ways as a leader, your job is to mitigate fear. You're managing fear on behalf of the people in the room. Yeah. Because you can't put people in a position where they are fearful that they're not going to succeed, right? So, and the reality is anything you're going to do, right? Anything, any activity you're going to undertake, social, corporate, whatever, it's all about creating change.
Right.
And change is the single scariest thing in the human experience.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So that means we as leaders have to be agents of, folks who can operate with fear and understand essentially what somebody's tolerance for that is, right? So not everyone in the organization can get the whole vision because it scares the bejesus out of them. They can't get there from here, right? If you tell somebody we're going to go and we're going to change the way healthcare is delivered,
oh my gosh,
they're going to go, no, I'm not, I've got laundry to do. I've got stuff going on this weekend. And you go, no, but you're going to be actively participating in it. No, you have to get that conversation down to a level where they're like, oh, yeah, I guess I can do that.
Yeah. I had a lot of, even last night we had our strategic planning session for our nonprofit going into 2023. And I have an individual who's been working in the team for 5 or 6 years, and she always asks the question when we start to like vision cast, like we're going to do this and this and this. And she always comes back to like what do we have to do tomorrow? I mean, she's like, what's the next thing right there? And that has really tried to keep me grounded because I'm a pretty visionary leader and I can kind of take a big, section and see. And I have to continuously remind myself that everyone is at a different level, like you said, and mitigating that fear and the frustration and the confusion and all those things that when I say XYZ, what does it look like on their side? How are they receiving that? And then what are all of the dominoes that are going through their mind that are like, wait, I don't understand. Or they don't see how the pieces fit together because it's too big or it's overwhelming. So I think that's a great point. I think that's a really great point. And I was thinking about back to the fear thing. I have a fear and risk, right? I think those we don't do a good job as leaders of putting them together because we talk a lot about risk mitigation, strategies and all the things when we talk about change management or whatever and how do we mitigate risk. But I don't really think that we talk about it from a fear lens as much as maybe we could.
Yeah. And the other part of that, the fear conversation, is understanding what the fear is, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to, I kind of broadly brushed it as like fear of change or fear of, that kind of thing. But in some cases, it's, the fear of rejection.
Right.
So one of the best little techniques that I use with folks is, look, I'm still going to like you even if we make mistakes.
Oh, you're still my friend. Yeah.
It sounds like crazy that that's a thing.
Right.
But what it does is it gets people from being on the opposite sides of the table to being on the same side of the table.
Yeah.
Right. So there's kind of two things that like feed this. One is like the Dan Goleman, emotional intelligence with people slow is fast. Right. So take your time, build your relationships with folks so you can move the needle forward. If you spend the time training somebody how to be successful, it may take longer in the short term, but it's way faster in the long term.
Right.
So if I spend 40, 80 hours training somebody how to do a given thing, they won't make mistakes later on and I don't have to fix it.
Right.
I've set them up for success, not for failure. But biologically, like back in the before times, not pre-COVID, but like way before, like caveman times, it used to be that there is differences in the ways that men and women interact, right? Mm-hmm. You'll notice that when women interact, they will sit across from each other at the table for the most part, and they will, be very tuned in on their, facial expressions, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Because that's how they generate empathy. Males in general, we used to stand side by side looking out on the horizon at the hunt. At the thing that they were going to go take out. And that's how they built relatedness because they had that common objective in the distance. They weren't necessarily concerned with how are you doing today? And it's much more, what are we doing today?
Yeah.
And so you have to have both of those things, though. You have to have both that relatedness and the emotional empathy, as well as the, can I get you aligned to the objective that we want to achieve? You can't have one or the other. It's always both.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't get that sense that I know who you are and I can empathize with who you are as a person, when I try and tell you what objective we're going to take,
right,
it doesn't take.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And fear, I think the fear part is, fear of rejection. I think that's a powerful one. And we inherently, there's a fear of failure. We don't really give that its due, place at the table because, I mean, that's a real thing. We have a fear of failure, fear of rejection, and all of that complicates those conversations and things. And I've had over the years, I've had that experience where as a female, I've asked, and I inherently worked in the military and the government space, so there's a large population of male colleagues at the table. But I found myself as I get a little bit older, I'm like, well, what are you afraid of? I've asked that question and across the table, I'm not afraid of anything. And I'm like, I didn't mean it like that. I wasn't trying to shut you down. But I see it, that's to your point. I'm like pulling out this, there's obviously something that we're afraid of, fear, failure, rejection, like something that's blocking this. And let's get to the core piece of it, right? And so we can work through that. But that psychological safety, I think that's what we call it, right? Being able to have someone get in the pool with you and want to have that conversation, that takes time. You can't just, throw that at them.
There's Fred Kaufman's Conscious Business. It's a great book. He talks about sort of the radical integrity process or the radical accountability process where, even before you're about to do something, look, here's how I see this might go. I want to prepare for us, you and I, our relationship,
right,
before we undertake this so that in the event that it goes one way or the other, we're going to be okay at the end. I use this in contract negotiation. I use this in helping somebody take on a new, organize our pancake breakfast. I mean, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
The moment you think it's not, is where the problems really start.
Yeah.
Where you go, okay, I have the salary, button, and now it's my way or the highway.
Yeah, I see that a lot as I work with small business, specifically in the defense contracting and any B2B relationship, right? So we talk a lot about that value proposition. And I was just having a conversation this week. Like, you don't just walk up to somebody in a room and poke them in the face. There's a way that we do this, and we have to approach, I think, business, ministry, government, like whatever it is, we have to approach those relationships from that space of mutual respect and honor. And that, I think that's important, because if you find people who have the same culture as you and they're like-minded, then together you can do really great things, right? But I think we don't often approach those things like that. And I feel like that's another piece where, fail.
The way you reminded me of in that sentiment, you reminded me of the saying, like, we're all God's children, or a lot of folks misunderstand what that really means. And it really means we're all just figuring it out.
Yeah. Yes.
We're all just giving it our best, right?
That's right.
We're all trying to make our way. And when you get closer to folks and say, look, let's figure it out together, the conversation changes. And you don't have this, like, I need to lead. You have this, let's go.
Yeah.
And you see it, and there's a tonal change, a generational tonal change. The Nike just do it is fading out, and the let's go is coming in, right?
Yeah.
You see it. I can see it in my kids. They don't have this, like, I'm going to go do this and get all the trophies and all the medals. They have a let's go, let's do this together. I'd much rather be with my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that too. Cause I have 2 kids in high school and 2 kids that are, adults, graduated college and off on the world. And I love their perspective of, they want quality. They are all about transparency. They want to get kind of to the root cause of things. And they have a great passion for justice in terms of, like, each person being respected. Like, I see that in my kids, like, that's their biggest sword that they carry for anyone, is like, trust and believe and respect, people regardless, because like you said, we're all just trying to figure it out. We're all on this crazy journey together and nobody really knows. And I think that's the piece that I try to bring in, like, respect of leadership and respect of these things that I've seen. It's like, at the core, I think, the human heart is exactly the same. I say that, like, inside the circle, we're all the same. We may come from different places. We may come from different expectations and different, demographics and whatever, but inside the circle, we're all the same. We all have the same heart. We all have the same thing, and if we can just treat people on that level and get to that space, and I think we could do a much better job of just leading people around us and helping our communities grow. So
absolutely. And it gets to that point. Like, if you understand what people are afraid of, right? And they're afraid of change, they're afraid of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Here's the challenge, right? They're looking for you as an expert to create certainty in an uncertain world.
Sure.
And so you then get to help them mitigate that fear and be like, look, we're not going to guarantee an outcome here. We're going to work together and we're going to do the best that we can. It goes right back to the Cub Scout motto, do your best, right?
Yeah.
That fear conversation that we've been talking about and what does it mean and how does it work is all about helping folks that can't deal with the fact that the world is uncertain.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And how do you make them feel that comfort and strength in embracing that uncertainty? And you have to sell them on the idea that, like, we're going to do this together and we're going to figure it out, and it's a discovery.
I see that too in business coaching, the little bit that I've done in consulting. It's very much like, I try to come in and say, it's okay. You're not alone, right? And you didn't break it. This is a normal response. And I think that, like you said, people and organizations, we get into this place and it's uncomfortable and unpredictable and causes chaos. And we invariably go back to the failure. Like, I must have done something wrong, expectation management. I thought it was going to be XYZ. And just bringing that level of surety to people to say, no, it's okay. We can work on this together and you're not in it alone. And I think that speaks volumes just in our own personal life. Like, I, get super personal, but I have a really good friend who's got stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And so recently we went up and spent, the weekend with her and her husband, and I just sat in bed with her. It's just that, like, I can't fix these things for you, but I can be with you. I can just be and share the same space with you. And I think sometimes that's all people need, is just someone to sit down. Yeah, just to sit with them, right? And say, you're not alone in this thing, even though I can't fix it or take it from you, but I'm still with you. So yeah, that's good stuff. Super good stuff. Well, my last question for you is, how do you keep showing up even when it hurts? So I that you've got a lot of experiences of what did we say, failure, leading from your failures before you lead from your accomplishments. That was what we said before.
Yeah. Wow. Feel like there's like some sort of opportunity to stick the landing here and have the right answer. And the reality for me is you just are. You just are.
Yeah.
Like if you keep waiting for the energy to show up when it's tough, then you're denying yourself the experience of it being tough. If you keep waiting for the motivation when it, to get better so you can take action, that's not going to work either, because then you're the fickle slave of motivation, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
I think you're barely involved in the decision to show up when it gets tough. You just show up.
You just do the next thing. Yeah.
You just go. You just go.
You just do it. Yeah. And what do you think motivates you to keep moving forward? Like as a business coach and consultant, what's your why?
So this is also like another one of those answers. Frankly, I thrive on learning and novelty, right? Which is not the conversation that like a lot of folks are looking for. Like, oh, he thrives on novelty. Frankly, I get bored, right? So I want to learn something new. I want to get really good at something. And then I want to go on to the next thing. I'll teach folks behind me in my wake to take and carry the responsibilities that come with the learning that I've come up with. But I really love the idea of learning forever. Yeah. And forever. I was just the other day, I bought a 3D printer. I don't know, maybe the other day. Time doesn't have any meaning. Anyway, so
it's 2 years ago,
concept. The other day, yeah, exactly. All words are made up. So I was peering over the edge of the build plate where the plastic's kind of squirted out of the icing nozzle that is the extruder. And I had this moment, this like epiphany level moment, it was cosmic. And I'm just like, this experience, the wonder and awe and just like I was able to command all of these things and all of these knowledge and skills, right, to create this brand new object that never existed before just now.
Yeah.
Like I want that all the time. I want I want to learn how to, play piano to do that. I want to learn how to teach somebody else how to do something that they could never, ever do before. I am radically in love with the idea of learning myself and then learning on behalf of others and then teaching them how that works.
Oh, I think that's amazing. And it really is. I think it's that beautiful, we're all uniquely designed. And I think that there's so much that we can give to the world, like just of yourself, right? Because you're the only person who will ever be Brian Mattocks. Like there will never be another one of you. There'll never be another one of me. And so we have one life to live. That's all you get, and there's an opportunity for you to take that creative, beautiful, messy thing to the world every single day because you matter and the world needs you to be the best version of you. So that's really the whole point of this thing, that we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what's the best way for people to contact you to keep motivating and showing up and all the things?
Oh, cool. So easiest, find me on LinkedIn is probably the kind of fastest way. But other than that, you can always hit me up in my email. It's brian@podcastchef.com or, any of the other different presentations I have. There's all sorts of fun stuff to go after. But yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm really, really accessible.
Very cool. And do you want to do a plug for your podcast?
So yeah, I run the Consulting Trap podcast, and it is for folks, I guess, we know who our target audience is, but we don't know who's listening to it. Like, I don't know it's Barbara from, Wisconsin. I think it's somebody like that who is out there trying to figure out how to get out of the being stuck, right? They're either doing service delivery or marketing, but not both at the same time. So folks like that are a typical listener. Hopefully we're giving them knowledge, skills, and experience by proxy that they can use to get out of that trap.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah. And know that they're not alone, right? Back to the
exactly
thing. Yeah, it's okay. You're not alone. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining me today on this Entrusted to Lead podcast. This has been super fun.
Thank you so much.
There were no chickens, so I think we can call that a success.
Jake. You did get a dog. I think Amazon, a courtesy of Amazon. So there's Amazon's plug they didn't want in the podcast.
But they didn't know that they were getting free. Yeah, free today.
It's not free. You can always send them a bill. See how it goes. Let me know.
All right, I will. Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. This podcast was brought to you by our amazing producers at Wildfire Creative Company. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please hop over to iTunes or Spotify, Subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And make sure you come back. We'll talk more about the essence and elements of leadership on the first and third Thursday of every month. If you enjoyed today's show, you can head over to danitacummins.com/podcast and gain access to additional free resources. But make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you can stay up to date on the latest shows. Have an amazing day. Talk to you soon.